So, so let us primarily understand an IT world, a project or an application, how it's working. So let's say there is a project called XYZ, and project, uh, um, in that project, we have a project manager, and there are multiple teams. Okay, just let's, we all have been watching cartoons since our childhoods, right? So let's nurture our imagination, and let's have multiple boxes in our heads. There is a box called development, okay, and there is a box called QA, and there is a box called production support. Okay, let's imagine three boxes. Okay, first box is the development team. Second box is the testing team, which is what we call as QA or quality assurance. The third box is nothing but our production support team. Now, what development team does? Development team basically writes the code and understands the functionality from the project manager and converts them into a working logic by writing some code. That's the job of development team. Now, once the development is completed, QA team will come into picture and they will test the application, right? QA team basically writes the test cases and runs them to examine that there are no loopholes in whatever the code development team has written. You understand this scenario. Now, the third box was production support. The production support basically is a team that ensures that when the product is live, meaning when the product is open to the customer, there are no issues or loopholes coming in the application, meaning the application should not crash. I mean, the application should be always up and running. All these scenarios will be considered by the production support team. Now, you must be wondering why, where is the DevOps team come into picture? So just imagine a rope in your head. You have three boxes, right? Development, QA, production support. Now take a rope in your imagination and try to tie a knot on these three boxes. Okay, wrapping a no rope on these three boxes, just like a gift paper wrap. So that particular rope is nothing but your DevOps team. What DevOps team is doing, sir? DevOps team is basically binding all the other teams. In what sense? In what sense? Let us consider those scenarios. So DevOps team basically is responsible for creating an infrastructure. Uh, for those who are asking uh, to screen share, unfortunately, I don't have a deck at the moment. There are some technical issues, so I'm not able to share my screen. So just let's focus on an audio interactive session for this. So what I was saying is there is a rope that is binding all these three boxes, right? So DevOps team is responsible for creating infrastructure for the developers to write their code. Now, what do I mean by infrastructure, right? So I'll give you a very quick example to explain infrastructure. You have a family with you and you want to survive. You need a home to stay, right? You need a house. You need some rooms in it. You need a kitchen. So that house is nothing but your infrastructure. Similarly, an application also needs to survive. An application also needs to stay. So that house of the application is called as infrastructure in our DevOps language. But for that, it's not basically a house. For that application, the infrastructure is called as a virtual machine, or basically what we call IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, right? Those are the infrastructure. So DevOps team is responsible for creating and giving infrastructure to the development team. Okay. Now, how is it helping the QA team? DevOps team is responsible for giving automation test suits to the QA team. Meaning, let's imagine that QA team is ready with the test cases and they want to go ahead by running it. What we will do is we will create a pipeline and we will hand over, meaning the DevOps team will hand over it to the QA team so that on a single click, they will be able to run all the test cases automatically. We will give that. And how is it helping the production support team? We will ensure that we have the access. So DevOps team will have the access to the servers. So whenever there is any issue coming in, so they will reach out to us asking, hey, can you please help what is going on with the logs in the server? So we'll log into the servers and we'll give them the logs and the details. So basically, in a nutshell, DevOps team is something that is binding all the other teams together. Now, I don't want to go into discussion wherein we talk what are the uses of DevOps, what are the benefits of DevOps that you can find on internet. So let's utilize this session enough to talk about how this particular market is understanding DevOps. So if it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I would have kindly said, hey, DevOps is the market that is ruling. Just learn some tools and get on the board. But right now, there are some hiccups that you need to also onboard yourself with and then enter the market. First of all, understand three terminologies. So until now, there was just an introduction. Now I'm actually talking from the real-time industry scenario. So for those who have just joined or for those who have not paid attention to what has been told now, it's fine. It was just that introduction of DevOps. From here onwards, we are basically discussing the key aspects of the real-time scenarios when it comes to the DevOps technology. So there are three terminologies. Okay, like keenly pay attention to these terms. The first one is DevOps. Second one is site reliability engineering, which is what we call it as SRE. And the third is platform engineering. So right now, DevOps is majorly considered from three aspects. One is obviously the DevOps. Second one is the SRE. And third is the platform engineering. We'll talk about DevOps. We already discussed the introduction part and all, right? So we'll just give it a shot. Uh, we'll talk about it. And we'll also talk about the platform. Just give me 1 minute. I'm getting an important call. I'm really sorry for it. I'm back. I'm extremely sorry for that. It was really an important call today. So just revising myself, what I was saying is there are three terminologies. One is DevOps, SRE, and then comes platform engineering. So DevOps is basically, you must have heard about CI/CD, right? These terms are something that everyone is well versed with, even though they don't know the definition or not, it doesn't matter. But CI/CD is something that everyone talks about it very frequently. So DevOps is basically from the angle of CI/CD that I'll talk in a moment. But what is SRE and what is platform engineering? SRE is basically site reliability engineering, wherein you are managing the application from the operations perspective. But what do I mean that? So let's say there is an application deployed into the production environment. Okay. As an SRE engineer, you are responsible for taking care and ensuring that the application is up and running in the production environment, may it be from the application's perspective or may it be from the servers or infrastructure perspective. Let us try to elaborate and understand it further. So from the server's perspective, you have to make sure that there are no infrastructure issues, meaning any server going down or disk space issues or any network related issues. All these things will consider in the infrastructure perspective. And from the application perspective, you have to have a little bit of functional knowledge and meaning which functionality does what. So SRE is basically a mix of that. What is platform engineering? And this is an interesting concept that has recently come up. Recently, meaning a couple of months ago. And people are really taking care of resources who are good with platform engineering. Now, platform engineering is basically a subset of infrastructure as code. I'm really sorry, but these are the terminologies that I'm throwing at you. I know People who are not from DevOps background must be finding a little difficult here, but don't worry. I'll go address all your questions. But for now, just accept what I'm saying. Okay. Firstly, I discussed three pillars, right? DevOps, SRE, platform engineering. So I'm talking about each one of them. There are new terms that you must be hearing from me, but for now, just try to accept things up. So platform engineering basically is relying on infrastructure as code. What is infrastructure as code, sir? As I told you, every application needs to have a house, meaning an infrastructure to be executed, to be able to run or to function. We as a DevOps engineer or platform engineer are focusing on making sure that the infrastructure is end-to-end ready and can be spin up as per the requirement. For example, the infrastructure for entire development environment is there. Okay. There are multiple environments, right? Development team makes use of development environment. QA team tests the application in QA environment. Similarly, the end user, the customer leverages the application in which production environment, correct? So the development environment infrastructure is there, QA environment infrastructure is there, and production environment infrastructure is there. So what if I need a new infrastructure, a new environment for some time? What do? You basically makes use of platform engineering concept called infrastructure as code. So you write some code. It's not basically the coding what development team does. It's another type of coding which we will be discussing. So you write some code, and then you make sure that when you execute that code, a new infrastructure or the new environment altogether is ready. That is called as infrastructure as code, correct? So infrastructure on demand, the entire environment on demand, is the concept of platform engineering. I hope I am pretty much clear onto that. And now DevOps team is basically working on creating the pipelines, meaning uh, you have the developers writing their code. You as a DevOps engineer ensures that, hey, the code is checked into a repository. From the repository, you take that code, you compile it, and you deploy it to the development environment. This is called CI/CD, right? In very common terms. But CI/CD is something DevOps is taking care of. Managing the infrastructure, the application SRE is taking care of, and writing the IAC, infrastructure as code, and spinning up on demand is what platform engineers are taking care. Now, in all these scenarios, as a newcomer, let's say I'm wanting to step into the DevOps world, is it okay for me to learn all these three and jump into the market? The answer is no. The answer is absolutely no. Because, sir, gone are those days wherein, you would just learn bunch of tools and then hit the market. Right now, everyone is moving to cloud. Every application is moving to cloud. So from that perspective, there is a very big necessity for everyone to learn what cloud is. So there are three major clouds in the market that majority of the applications are using. One is obviously AWS. The second one is Azure from Microsoft, and the third is GCP from Google. Right? These are the three major cloud providers that majority of the applications are using it. So if you want to actually step into the market, what I would suggest is go learn these concepts of DevOps, SRE, platform engineering, learn some tools, learn some concepts, have some functional knowledge as well. But at the same time, it is ought for a newcomer to mandatorily learn some cloud knowledge as well, right? Have some cloud knowledge, because right now I doubt if there is an application which is running on premise. Like gone are those days wherein you would have an on-prem server running an application. No, everything is on cloud now. So as a DevOps engineer, if you don't know the cloud, how would you be able to run the infrastructure? If you don't know cloud, how will you be able to write infrastructure as code? So in from that perspective, it is a very basic necessity for anyone wanting to or aspiring to be a DevOps engineer has to have a knowledge of cloud. Either choose AWS or Azure or GCP. Now the question arises, what level of knowledge should I have? Like, is it okay if I, like, in the cloud, there are multiple resources, multiple services. If you take the example of AWS, you have EC2 instance, S3 bucket, VPC, all those resources are there, right? Is it okay if I just pick one called EC2 instance? EC2 instance, for others who don't know, is just like a virtual machine. Okay. Is it okay if I just pick EC2 instance and go ahead with it? The answer is like, no. You have to have some basic knowledge of the cloud. Meaning, I would recommend, day in, day out, I take interviews of people aspiring to change their company or join a new company, or a fresher who is willing to start their career. I recommend, or as a panelist, I expect you to have basic knowledge of all the concepts, meaning majority of the concept that an application uses. See, from the application perspective, networking is there. From the application perspective, an infrastructure is there. From the application perspective, so what is needed for an application to run, that much of knowledge from the cloud is sufficient. You get my point? So if I just go ahead from the networking knowledge, how will be I able to take a take on running the virtual machines, right? So these things should be combined together. I would recommend, there are some basic certifications from any cloud provider. For example, if it is Azure, you would have some basic certification called Azure Administrator or Azure DevOps. There are some codes associated with it. So it is prudent for you to go ahead and crack those certifications. Let's imagine that there are 500 people reaching to a company. There are 500 resumes on the table. What makes your resume isolated with others? The, the key selling point is nothing but the certifications on your resume. I always tell people, whomever I met, I don't know, there are 41 participants in this particular bridge. I don't know any one of you, but on the go, I'm telling you, certifications is mandatory for anyone to be isolated from the crowd and to showcase that, hey, I have deep rooted knowledge in the particular cloud. So if you're really wanting to step into DevOps, or if you're really wanting to crack your career, there is a very great scope, I must tell you. But if you're wanting to be very serious and proceed ahead by taking this as a career, you should take some certifications. You have to go ahead taking some certification. Now, there must be a lot of questions like, which cloud should I take? Is AWS good, Azure good, or GCP good? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because a house is a house. May it be built from concrete, or may it be built from wood. A house is a house. So the functionally, the concepts will be the same. Functionally, the concepts will be exactly the same. It's just that you have to get a root knowledge of any particular cloud. And I do not recommend people who are starting their career to learn multiple clouds. You will get confused. There are different terminology. For example, in AWS server, it's called as EC2, wherein in Azure it is called as a VM, right? So there are different terminology. In AWS, a network is called as VPC, Virtual Private Connect. So VPC, and in Azure it is called as a VNet, and then you have subnet, a route table, etc., etc. So there are different terminologies. Unnecessarily, you will get confused. For now, I would recommend you to please pick one cloud. It's fine. It doesn't really matter which cloud is in demand or not. It's fine. Go ahead, pick any cloud. If you are really wanting to know which cloud is demand, AWS is something in demand, because more than 50% of the projects entirely right now are on AWS, because that was something, the very first established cloud in the market. So whatever applications have migrated to AWS are still on AWS, haven't gone switched to other cloud as well. But there are GCP projects, so many coming in. There are so many Azure projects coming in. So from the volume perspective, AWS has the highest volume. But as I said just now, pick any cloud. It doesn't matter. Pick any cloud. Learn what are the basic certifications needed for the particular cloud, and crack them. Write those certifications. A couple of them should be paid certifications, but go ahead and write them. Okay. And once you have cracked, now go back to the DevOps and learn some tools. Now, after I say this thing in these sessions, people generally ask me like which institute is better to learn the cloud, which course on Udemy or any other learning platform is good to uh, go ahead with the learning of cloud or certifications and all. I say do not pay any institutions, do not pay any online teaching websites. If you really have the zeal, go ahead and YouTube it. Everything is available on YouTube. Every single thing is available on YouTube. It's just that you should have the zeal, you should have that enthu to go ahead and crack the certification. And you will find the entire syllabus on YouTube. There are like 3 hour long classes for AWS cloud certification. There are 2 hour long classes of DevOps tools. It's just that if you don't know what needs to be learned, you will always wander from here and there. If you're focused what you need to crack, everything is there on internet for free. Okay, I strongly do not recommend paying any institutions and learning from a person uh, by giving a lot of money. That too, they don't teach you end to end. I have good experience because I have been a tutor as well in a couple of institutions wherein you know we are asked not to cover the entirety, but just to maintain the time of the batch. So in a nutshell, everything will be compromised. Here, if you take yourself voluntarily and go ahead and learn on the YouTube or any other free platform, it will be all up to your thirst, your zeal. So I would recommend please go ahead on YouTube and learn about any other cloud platform. So as I said in the beginning of session, I'm not interested in talking about the benefits of DevOps. I'm not selling DevOps, right? I don't get money out of telling the benefits. I'm just telling you the real time truth of this particular world in the IT, what DevOps is doing right now. And if you wanting to get into the IT world as a DevOps career, you need to learn and what you need to acquire from the technical skills, right? And now, lastly, before I open for questions, one big question that I always get is DevOps having uh, coding? Do I need to learn coding, or do I need to be good at coding when it comes to learning DevOps? The answer is no. There is absolutely no need of learning coding. No need. You don't have to have knowledge on Java, Python, C++, all these coding or scripting languages, not needed. But I will tell you one scenario. Let's imagine that you just went to a new country altogether and you moved in with your family. Okay, your spouse, your kids are there in a new country, altogether a new country, and you got a home there. And one fine day, the water tap started leaking. And a couple of days later, the leakage started to increase and the water started to burst out of the tap. What you would do? You will call the plumber. But in that country, there is no service called plumbing. There are no plumber. Okay. So in that scenario, what do? You basically try to analyze that situation. Hey, how can I be that guy and stop the leakage? You try to do something here and there. You pick some equipments and do something or the other to stop the water tap. Similarly, in this world also, in this DevOps world also, when you're working with the servers, you have to have some basic knowledge of the servers. Like for example, if I'm working on Linux server, right? There are Windows servers, Linux servers. So if I'm learning the Linux server, if I'm working on Linux server, sorry, and if any repetitive task needs to be automated, I need to have some basic knowledge of the bash scripting, because without bash, I cannot talk to the Linux, correct? So there are some basic shell scripting commands that I need to know. Once I know them, I will be able to write a simple script and automate that particular task. The situation is very similar to fixing a leakage of tap. That's it. That amount of scripting knowledge is sufficient, right? So now you must be questioning me, hey, you told infrastructure as code. That word had code. Now you are telling me there is no coding involved. Now try to clear this confusion. So first of all, point number one, scripting knowledge is necessary but only what is required. Okay, scripting is basically, you know, if you know how to operate Linux, you know how to script. Simple. There are some for loop, while loop, if conditions that you need to add, and Google is always available, and on top of Google you have ChatGPT. All good, nothing to worry. Now, what is infrastructure as code then, sir? So infrastructure as code, there are so many tools available in the market that will help you to crack that infrastructure as code. For example, if it is only Azure, let me just try to revise, because in the early session I told what is platform engineering, right? I give you an example of spinning up a new environment other than development, QA, and production. Any new environment that is needed, I will be taking a help of infrastructure as code, spin that new environment and make it ready. How do I do that? If it is Azure, I can do that using something called ARM templates, ARM, Azure Resource Manager templates. So those templates are written in JSON language. So everything is available on internet, don't worry. If I have to create a virtual machine, I will just create a JSON template, which is called ARM template, that will be saved as template.json, and run that JSON template. A new virtual machine will be created. What if it is AWS, sir? In AWS, those are called cloud formation templates. Again, these are the same templates, but in AWS perspective. So on top of this, there are new tools available in the market. Like, those tools are really good, and they basically they address all the clouds, not just specific to one cloud. Something you must have heard called Terraform, right? This is a new tool that is ruling in the market, which is called Terraform. Terraform is the best example of infrastructure as code. Terraform can address AWS. It can, its market is for GCP, its market is for Azure, everything. So it's just that Terraform, knowledge you should have, and then it can create infrastructure in any cloud. Now, what is Terraform language written in? It is called HashiCorp language, HCL. It is again a subset of JSON only. So you don't need to have coding knowledge, is what my point is. Everything is there. You spend one day understanding what this particular JSON file is doing, done. Your next day you will have knowledge of what that particular file is doing, right? So it is not necessary. Again, I'm stressing on the point that there is no coding knowledge required and no coding is needed. I would recommend, I would definitely say that if you want to automate things up, it is your call, that you can choose any coding language. For example, I can use Python in Linux. I can use Python on Windows. So I would say, yeah, my manager came up to me, hey, Mudassir, can you please automate this particular task? Or can you make sure that this repetitive activity can be automated? It is my call. I can make use of Bash script, or I can make use of Python. It is my learning. It is my level of enthusiasm that I can go with any of the scripting languages. Understand? So for any automation, scripting is necessary, but which scripting language, it's your call. Again, coding is not mandatory. Any coding language is not needed for a DevOps. So this question I keep on getting. So before anyone asks, I have tried my bit to address it. Now, with all this said, I would want everyone to please unmute and ask your questions one by one, so that we can understand from your perspective what are the doubts that you have. I don't know if you guys are freshers or working in any company or working in any other technology wanting to cross switch DevOps. So I would like to hear from you if there are any questions.
Hello, good evening, sir.
Yep.
This is Karimun.
Hello.
Hello, are you audible?
Yeah, you are audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, I am completed recently. I completed my AWS training, 3 months of coaching actually.
Okay.
I am interested in cloud. Please guide me how to join in a company, or how, I'm a fresher. recently I completed. Please guide me on.
Okay, so if you are a fresher and you have completed